Hi all, Happy New Year to 2010 or 2010. Talking of being in a sort of futuristic sounding year, let's have a look at the game of the HAL Supercomputer. It was a fictional computer in Arthur C. Clarke's Space Odyssey saga. So 2001, A Space Odyssey. And HAL is actually an acronym for Heuristically Programmed Algorithmic Computer, the AL for the algorithmic. And that is really interesting actually in the light of previous videos for how computers can think like humans. It's like Botvinnik's project, because actually this computer was not only controlling all the subsystems on the ship, but apparently, and this is where the heuristically, the algorithm heuristically programmed, it also did things you wouldn't expect computers to do. It was depicted as being capable not only of speech recognition, facial recognition, natural language processing, also lip reading, art appreciation, interpreting emotions, expressing emotions, reasoning, and playing chess, of course. So it's the playing chess which is of great interest here. Let's have a look at this game, which was actually based on a game in real life between Roesch and Schlage, Hamburg 1910. Apologies for my pronunciation. And Black played really a fine positional sacrifice in this game, and it's one of the positions which was later used, not the whole game, for the 2001 Space Odyssey. So I'm going to take you there with the black pieces. Something that strikes me about the film generally, and space films generally, is the coldness. The kind of cold. No one can hear you scream, and like cold metal. And I don't know. It's this feeling which sort of matches with the computer being kind of cold, but in fact, compared to the actors, they were apparently in monotone voice. I haven't seen the film recently, but they're all speaking monotone, and the computer is like the one which is going crazy in the film eventually, and it's got a soft voice actually, or not a cold and clinical voice, but soft and conversational. But the actual game here, the game combination is very clinical. It's like a Marshall Gambit concept here, sacrificing the e-pawn to get a dangerous black, initiative. So knight f4, so knight takes c6, there's knight takes c2, check. So the queen has to move. And here is where it becomes, very, very interesting as an opening, this. Knight takes e5, just offering the rook. So, why is this really bad for white to take the rook? Apparently white's best is d4, but in the game, queen takes a8 was played by the astronaut Frank Poole. He's the astronaut who's apparently playing chess against the HAL 9000 supercomputer, and they're on the way. I think it's to a planet. I think it's Mercury that they're onto. Anyway, they're on the spaceship Discovery. But and you can see actually the video on YouTube where he plays now after Queen d3. This position, Bishop d1 is coming up. So Bishop h3, and now here he actually tells the computer he wants to play Queen takes pawn. So he says Queen takes pawn. The bishop plays Bishop takes knight's pawn, and then Rook e1 is played, and then here the computer starts saying, "Sorry, Frank, you've missed Queen f3." Bishop takes f3, knight takes f3 mate. I'm sorry, by the way, Superman's in the background. He's just recovered from hospital, and I think he's going to save the planet. But anyway, so the computer said this, but actually the computer's made a couple of inaccuracies which are picked up by Wiki, that it's actually not bishop's free from black's perspective, but if the computer was that intelligent, maybe for convenience it is saying bishop's free rather than, bishop 6. In the old notation descriptive, it was actually bishop 6, king bishop 6 to be precise, on the king's side. But the computer said bishop free, and what's worse, the computer didn't give here free alternatives for white to stave off knight h3 mate. It just gave bishop takes f3, knight takes f3 mate. But in fact, white could play queen e6 to delay mate by one move, queen c8, and queen h6. And you might think, well, am I being pedantic to raise this wiki pedanticness? But actually, if it's a computer, you would expect the computer to be very precise in its variations and play the best moves for both sides. And Wiki's argued, well, this is why the computer was going crazy, because it was inaccurate. It didn't show the best continuation. It gave an optimistic continuation with the computer winning, immediately after bishop takes f3. There's another interesting aspect to this, that Frank just accepted it, that he knew he was going to lose anyway. So it was just a time filler, and he knew that the computer would, crunch him like, modern engines would crunch us. We just accept we're going to lose. We just use it for training. So he had that same sort of compliant kind of voice after he lost. He says, oh well, he accepts bishop takes queen, knight takes f3, mate, and that's that. But yeah, this is how is depicted as one of by the American Movie Institute as one of the top villains in all-time movie history, ranked about 13 at the moment. Well, I think Hannibal Lecter's up there, one or two. So yeah, bishop takes g2, rook e1, queen f3, and the threat of knight h3 is really difficult to stop. It's apart from giving up the queen with these locations, h6, c8, and e6. It's only for one move. So bishop takes f3, knight f3. It's neat. Let's have a look at this game in overview and summary then. It's actually the Worrell Gambit. I think this is called the Worrell Gambit, W-O-R-R-A-L. So white is playing queen e2, as if he's going to avoid the horrors of the Marshall Gambit. But they come back to haunt white with black playing d5 anyway. So sacrificing the e-pawn. And even offering now this, diagonal to get at the rook after this queen e4, knight e5. So what is actually going on here? If queen takes e5 out of interest, then apparently black has got a crushing position here with bishop d6. For example, queen e4, queen h4. So there's a threat of check winning the queen. So say king h1 now. Now bishop g4. And now there are major threats. So say d4, rook moves to attack the queen, say the queen moves. Now black has a forced mate in 7 here, believe it or not, with like queen takes f2. So knight d2, rook e1. It's all falling to pieces for white. And if he had sort of tried to like defend with f3, say, here, something like knight e2 is really crushing. So threatening mate on h2. If h3, then knight g3 check. And then taking the queen. So it's all really over. This is a really vicious attack. So I'm wondering if this can be used in our repertoire, this gambit, delayed sort of Marshall Gambit against queen e2. With the idea of sacrificing the rook. I think it's a pretty cunning positional sacrifice. A kind of distraction tactic to get the queen sucked down into the position. And then, have these very aggressive knights. But starting with this queen d3, which reminds me of a Morphy game where Morphy played queen d3, cramping the queen side. But also the queen's very useful tactically on f3 and h3. And white's in real trouble. White's really passive after bishop d1, bishop h3. It's all being thrown into the attack now. All these resources are getting to be really dangerous. Until, queen f3 is absolutely crushing. Let's say a few words now. Stanley Kubrick, who was the director of 2001, was actually a really great chess enthusiast himself. Apparently his father taught him at the age of 12, and the game actually remained a lifelong obsession. In fact, for many years, apparently, he was actually supplementing his income by playing chess for quarters in Washington Square Park and various Manhattan chess clubs, according to Wiki. So I think the attention for detail in 2001, using a real game of some less known masters, is really interesting. It's a really interesting choice of game. It has that kind of cold, calculation and a deep positional, sacrifice, attracting the queen, sucking the queen in, and sort of baiting, the computer's human opponent to get a position where the king was undefendable. So a great director and chess enthusiast. I hope you enjoyed that, and Happy New Year 2010, or 2010, should I say. Please leave any comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.